the Bible and the real man of God. Psalm 51, verse 6. Behold, thou desirest truth in the inward parts, and in the hidden part thou shalt make me to know wisdom. We're talking today about a person who is a real man of God and what kind of character it needs to be a real man of God. What kind of character, what kind of person, what kind of truthfulness with yourself to be a real man of God. Every week we see people on television, on YouTube, holding a Bible, and they abuse it like it's a dirty rag. I don't think for a moment that the vast majority of these preachers holding a Bible go to bed at night and say, boy, I'm a real man of God. I really doubt it. I don't think there's an Adventist preacher who goes to bed at night and says, what am I doing? Am I being honest? Am I being fair with the scriptures? And ask themselves what the end of the matter is going to be? Or do they just keep going to bed every night just with the momentum of people praising them and thinking how wonderful they are? But to be a real man of God, you must desire truth in the inward parts. And in the hidden part, you must know wisdom. If the Adventists and the other self-proclaimed messengers of God would be totally honest with God and their public, they would admit that none of the Gospels of the New Testament was written to or for them any more than it was written for the Jehovah's Witnesses or the Mormons. But like the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons, the Adventists and others have misappropriated scriptures, claiming that they were commissioned to go out and tell the world their own brand of doctrine, false teaching, prophecies, and wild ideas. Does anybody believe that a Mormon minister goes to bed at night and thinks, wow, I'm a real man of God? I'm really doing the Lord's work. No, because in his inward part, he knows he's not what he pretends to be. And so does Doug Batchelor, Stephen Bohr, Walter Vaith. So did Ellen G. White, night after night. But pride got in the way. And there came a point where she loved the adoration of men far more than she loved Christ. And having dug a hole so deep for herself, she would not climb out. Every person feels compelled that they can walk out the door and start their own church. The splinter groups from the Adventist church are as many as the splinter groups from the Baptist church. They can't get along with each other. They don't agree on doctrines. So they just go out and do something, feel compelled to preach their own brand of doctrine and heresy. In the end of the day, they know what they are in their hearts, but they shut their eyes so they don't see it. And they say, I'm just going to think about the positive things. They always claim they are one of the 100,000s of a reformation. It's always a reformation. It's a restoration. And that God is using one of the countless remnants of a remnant, of a remnant, of a remnant, of a remnant, splinter group after splinter group after splinter group, that make it pure as if they teach Christ is a major church hopper. That's what Ellen G. White believed. Christ came to the earth. He started his church. Then he gave it over to Satan in 250 years. He gave the body of Christ over to Satan. And then he jumped from one church to another church to another church to another church. And it just keeps going on and on. And everyone starts up with, oh, little flock. They start with their 6 or 7 people in their church. And they console themselves by saying, oh, little flock. When they know that's not what God intended for them. He was talking about the small group of apostles. But they say it anyway. They run to Matthew 28 and they say, hey, see, we are commissioned to preach the gospel. When Matthew 28 is it's Christ speaking to the apostles, not to Ellen G. White, not to Doug Batchelor, not to any of those people. But they won't have the integrity to admit that they were not called to preach the gospel. And it's a matter of just being truthful. When the Adventists talk about the character of God, one of the things they'll go back and they'll say the 10 Commandments are the very character of God. But they never talk about the character of God to be truthful, utterly truthful at any cost. They never talk about the character of God to have integrity, utterly perfect integrity. No matter what the cost. And now it seems that every Christian is supposed to try to figure out on their own where Christ is hopped today and what group he's at today. And they all claim to be the truth. They all claim to love their brand of truth. The Protestant Reformation has led to a disastrous problem. The cults and the chicanery, trickery, and every abuse has made a mockery out of the Bible. And they aren't even ashamed to continue to do so. They all claim they love the Bible while they abuse it, having no boundaries or ethics. There's people on the YouTube who will say every 5 seconds it changes. Donald Trump was the Antichrist, the Pope is the Antichrist, the Catholic Church is the beast, that's the beast, the mark of the beast is this, the mark of the beast is a vaccine, the mark of the beast is computer chips, and they say it so adamantly, as if they're prophesying. Of course, what else would you expect from a group that claims to have, quote, the spirit of prophecy? It's a freaky spirit when it comes out the way it comes out. It's not a spirit of truthfulness. They'll make one prediction after another prediction after another prediction. They have hundreds of thousands of final warnings, hundreds of thousands of prophecies about what's going to happen at the end, the Pope, the mark of the beast. And there's never an apology when it doesn't come to pass. They just make another prophecy. There's never any heartfelt, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I owe the whole world an apology. No, they don't owe the whole world an apology. They just skip from one to another. They just make another prophecy and pretend they didn't make a false prophecy 2 months ago. People set dates. Oh, my goodness. They set dates all the time. There's never any apology. There's never anybody who stands up and says, I'm wrong. And worst of all is that the Adventists won't even hold their own people accountable for their false prophecy. If they were to be honest for 1 minute, they'd admit that Christ never told them or their followers to do anything but obey the apostolic church and its bishops, whom he did give authority to preach the gospel and teach others. Whether they like that or not, that's the truth. And it takes a real man of God to be so honest. Every Adventist preacher, along with every Jehovah's Witness, every Mormon, everybody who claims that they're a preacher of God, needs to come to Jesus. They need to come to Jesus' moment when they're honest with themselves and stop pretending they are something they are not. But then, why would they then preach whatever they want if they aren't willing to be both a man of God and be honest? I mean, if they're not going to be honest, it doesn't make any difference to them. But why even do it? Why go down that path? If you're not going to be a Christian and be honest and have integrity, then why even go down the path? Why even profess to be a Christian? If you're going to do something, do it right. If you're going to be a Christian the right way. Doubtfully, these groups or their members will be honest enough to admit it because they love their little tiny following and they love to attempt to usurp the authority by making themselves the authority more than the true worship of a true God from their heart. They claim the Catholic Church usurps the authority of God and pretends to be God and speak for God. Well, the Catholic Church has the authority to speak for God, but none of these people have any authority whatsoever. The Catholic Church got their authority from the apostles, and from the apostles got their authority from Christ. They all tend to speak for God. Ellen G. White absolutely thought of herself that she was just going to pull the wool over everybody's eyes. And she did. And now they have a whole bunch of a group of the ministers, and that what they do is they facilitate the deceiving of people with little tiny gotcha excuses for what they believe. It's flippant. It's foolish. It's dishonest. But they won't have that moment when they stop at night and they say, what am I doing? Because like Ellen G. White, they have dug the hole so deep that pride keeps them from climbing out. The love and affection of their followers keeps them from coming out. I'm watching Doug Batchelor out there on his panorama, a prophecy, and a stage that looks like something out of Las Vegas. And this is does he think for a moment that the Apostle Paul built himself a stage, walked out on a stage, and everybody's sitting there, and he's got gold plaques everywhere and a big painting, and he's standing out there on a stage by himself or with his wife? That's the kind of arena. That's what Christ wants him to do. And he's up there and he's just a know-it-all. He knows every answer to everything in the Bible. He's going to tell you who the beast is. He's going to tell you who the false prophet is. He's going to tell you about Sunday law. He's going to tell you about Sunday worship. He's going to tell you all these things, and not one of them are going to be right. And nobody will hold him accountable. Revelation 18:4. Come out of her, my people. If you want to know who killed the prophets, who killed the apostles, read Matthew 23 and what Christ prophesied that would happen to his prophets and his apostles, and you will see that the Sabbath keepers hunted them down, scourged them in the synagogue of all places, persecuted them, betrayed them, vowed not to eat or drink until they had killed the Apostle Paul, stood there and let St. Stephen be bit on his flesh by a bunch of rabid Sabbath keepers who were acting like a bunch of demon-possessed dogs. But many still will will profess that they don't have to be honest to be God's people. They can do whatever they feel like doing and convince themselves Christ approves. You want to have a rapture? They have a rapture. They've got everybody believing there's a rapture. What are they? Who's going to be there to apologize if there's not a rapture? Who is going to stand up and hold them accountable? Who's going to hold them accountable when the Pope is not the Antichrist, when the Pope is not the son of perdition? By the way, 2 Thessalonians 2 talks about the son of perdition. Well, Judas was called the son of perdition too. And he was a devout Sabbath keeper who betrayed Christ with a kiss. So I'm calling on all ministers out there to have a come to Jesus moment. Doug Batchelor included. It's too late for Ellen G. White or James White or anybody else who's gone now. You have this day in front of you. You can go to bed tonight and you can say, I'm going to stop fooling myself. And others. I will count the cost, and whatever that cost is, I will pick up my cross and not the law of Moses. And I will carry my cross, even if it's to utter shame like Jesus Christ. But I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to be truthful with myself and be truthful with everyone else. I'm going to stop hiding and stop pretending to be something I know I am not. I'm going to stop telling people that I keep the 10 Commandments when I know good and well I don't. Behold, you desirous truth from the inward parts, and in the hidden parts you shall make me to know wisdom. Psalm 15, verse 1. Lord, who will dwell in your tabernacle? Who will dwell on your holy mountain? He who walks with integrity and does righteousness. He does what is right, and he speaks the truth in his heart. Whoever does not slander with his tongue, nor does his neighbor wrong, nor takes shame on his neighbor. That one verse alone, if the Adventist church kept it, they would be out of business tomorrow. They've dug themselves a hole, and perhaps you're in the hole with them. But you have a choice. You can go to bed tonight and say, I'm going to stop it. I'm going to stop slandering my neighbor with my tongue. I'm going to stop doing my neighbor wrong. I'm going to stop putting shame on my neighbor and telling them that they're all a bunch of Satan worshipers and sun worshipers. You can make that decision tonight. Unfortunately, there is no members of the Sabbath-keeping Adventist Church or of its dissonant groups who walk in righteousness, who does justice, who speaks the truth from the heart, who does not slander with her tongue. But boy, do they keep the Sabbath. It's okay if they wrong their neighbor or bring reproach on their neighbor, because they keep the Sabbath. If that's what's in your heart, let it be rooted out by the Spirit of God. The slander of Christianity by the Adventist movement continues to this day, being unrepented. It's up to you whether you will repent. Let me give you this hope. Psalm 32. How blessed is he whose transgressions are forgiven and his sins are covered. Hold this in your heart. Remember how blessed it's going to be. How blessed is the man whom the Lord does not impute iniquity, because in his spirit there is no deceit. Grab it, hold it, cherish it, grab it and pour it into your heart. You can be like verse 5. I acknowledge my sin to you, O God. My iniquity I did not hide. You can stop hiding your iniquity. Oh, that the Adventist church would stop hiding their sins against Christianity, against their neighbor. I said, says the scripture, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave my guilt of my sin. Selah. Let everyone who is godly pray to you in a time when you may be found. Harden not your hearts as in the day of provocation. Surely a flood of great waters will not reach him.